This is terrifying. This is the start of an AI slop era for Blender. Is Blender slowly going to be a paid-for subscription within the next 3 years? This can't possibly be good news. The subscriptions will start soon. Generative AI will enter the chat. I think I'm going to start looking for a new modeling program. I think they'll start collecting data for AI generative model training. Those are some of the comments from a recent Facebook post announcing the fact that Dell, backed by Nvidia, is joining the Blender Development Fund as a corporate sponsor for 30,000 euros per year. A post yesterday announcing the fact that Netflix animation studios were also joining the Blender Development Fund had a similarly calm and reasonable response from the community. Now, I know some of you were thinking those are just Facebook comments, it's where the dumbest people are found, and that is true. But if you look across social media, you're seeing a similar response everywhere you look. So I thought I would make a little video just kind of clearing up what's actually happening here and addressing some people's concerns. Before we jump in, this video is sponsored by me and my Exterior Masterclass course. The Exterior Masterclass just got even better with a brand new module that adds over 9 hours of bonus content. In this module, I'll show you every step that I took to create this rundown inner city back alley. We'll cover advanced materials, neon signs, creating assets from photos, modeling from references, decals, and tons of other techniques. If you want to get serious about creating exterior architecture scenes in Blender, pick up the Exterior Masterclass and start learning today. Right now, you can save 35% on all of my courses if you use the code SAVE35 at Gumroad. This code even works with the Blender Masterclass bundle, which gets you both the exterior and interior masterclass courses at a big discount. So I'll begin by saying that none of that is true. Blender is safe. Blender Development Fund companies have basically no say in what's going on. It's just a donation. There's not going to be any data used for AI training. There's not going to be any subscriptions or anything like that. But to clear up some of these misconceptions, I think you have to have an understanding of how Blender works and some of its history. So back in the halcyon days of the 1990s, Ton developed Blender and he created a company called NAN, not a number, which was designed to turn Blender into an actual viable commercial product. The idea back then, I believe, was that Blender was going to be free, even back then, and it was going to be paid for by corporations. If a studio wanted to use it, especially if they needed like support for specific features or something like that, they would have to pay money, and that would pay for Blender to be free for everybody else. Because this was the 90s and every tech company just had money thrown at them by investors, Ton managed to rake up, I think it was a few $1 million in investment. It was quite a decent sum of money. By his own admission, it wasn't spent particularly well. And then the dot-com bubble burst, and the investors wanted their money back, or at least they wanted a return. If they couldn't get it, they were just going to sort of fold the company, and Blender would be a tax write-off, and nobody could do anything with it. By this point, Blender already had a little community of enthusiastic users, and Ton offered the investors a deal. If he could rake up 100,000 euros from the community, they could basically buy and open source the license. Being open source and the specific license that Blender uses means that it always has to be available for free. So that was the deal that was agreed to, and there was a big crowdfunding campaign, and they managed to get the money. So the Blender Foundation was set up as a non-profit, and the Blender Institute was created underneath it in order to facilitate the development of Blender. The idea is that the foundation raises money, which the Institute and Blender Studios uses to develop Blender and create the animated movies that they make to showcase what the tools can do. Blender is also developed by the community because it's open source. Anybody can take it and anybody can contribute code, and anybody can pretty much do what they want with Blender. Now, technically, it is possible under the license to charge for Blender if you are charging basically for the download, or if you put it on a CD, you can charge for the CD. But it always has to be available somewhere online for free, right? You can't close source it. You can't lock Blender down and say nobody can have access. As long as you're developing on Blender and you're releasing it to the public, as a paid product or whatever, it has to be released somewhere for free, all of the changes that you've made to it. So because of that reason, Blender is basically always going to have to be free. The only way you could ever change that license, first you would have to get the original investors to agree to that, which unless you could give them a lot of money, they've got no incentive to do. But more importantly, everybody who's ever submitted code to Blender, which is thousands and thousands of people over the years, you would have to get their permission because they've donated this code to Blender under the exact same license. So major features in Blender like cycles was developed originally as, technically still is, an add-on for Blender. It was developed, at least partially, by somebody who wasn't actually even working directly for Blender at the time. It was a community development. So you would need the permission of developers for all of the features like that. And that's just not going to happen. Some of those people aren't even alive anymore, so you would need to track down their estate. It's functionally impossible for Blender to ever be a paid product. But even if that was a possibility, it's not something that anybody who's involved in the leadership of Blender wants. The new team who now runs Blender, they've been involved in Blender for decades. You know, between them, they have many decades in Blender. They're passionate about Blender. They're passionate about open source software. Nobody's going to sell to Dell. Nobody's interested in selling user data. They don't even collect data about stuff like that. But more importantly, if they did want to sell to Dell, you wouldn't be selling it for 30,000 euros per year. I'm glad that Dell has decided to start backing the development fund, but realistically, 30,000 euros is half a developer's salary. It's nice to have. It's good. Blender needs the money. Blender's had a mixed situation financially lately. They could do with the money. I'm glad it's coming in, but you aren't buying Blender for 30,000 euros, okay? I would suggest, if you're worried about these things, or you're worried about Blender's development in general, donate to the Blender Development Fund yourself. I think at least half, if not the majority of the funding, comes from people like you and me. Now, you can donate monthly, or you can donate as a one-off, maybe just every so often if you have a bit of spare money and you want to send anything like $5, €5, whatever, you can. Or you can set up like a direct debit and pay a few dollars every month, whatever you would like. If you have a company that benefits from Blender especially, it's a nice thing to do to give something back to the development, and it's beneficial for you. Which kind of comes to the final point. Why are companies like Netflix and Nvidia and Dell and Wacom and all the other companies that are in the development fund, why are they giving money away? Well, first of all, it's probably a tax write-off, so it's not costing them as much as you would think. Secondly, companies like, like Unreal, right? The Unreal Engine is, a lot of their users, they use Blender. Blender being good is beneficial for them. Netflix Animation Studios, if they're backing Blender, I assume they're probably using it in their pipeline somewhere. It's good for them for Blender to be better because they use it, they benefit from it. Companies that are just involved in tech in general, it's good for their image, it's good PR if they can say, well, we give to that tool everybody really likes. It's good for their image. The PR aspect is one of the reasons why I find these overly negative attitudes that people have whenever someone joins a development fund really quite annoying. Obviously, it's stupid anyway to like complain that people are giving money to the software that you support, but it's especially stupid to like openly lambast a company and drag its name through the dirt when the only reason a lot of them are doing it is to try and give themselves a PR boost. It really disincentivizes a lot of companies to even bother giving this money if they know that they're actually going to get a negative reaction from it. I'm not saying that you need to kiss the arse of these companies just because they're giving Blender money, but just think about the response a little bit before you have a negative reaction like that. Anyway, I will leave a link in the description to the Blender Development Fund if you would like to donate. I'll also leave a link to my Gumroad store where you can pick up the Exterior Masterclass. Remember, if you use the code SAVE35, you can get 35% off it right now. That code also works on all of my other courses.